Again.
Yeah. Here we go. It is episode 142 here of pucksports.com with the great Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network, all brought to you by Hartley and Hartley Insurance, family-owned, second-generation independent insurance agency. It's been serving the Puget Sound area since 1978. They promise honesty, fairness, and integrity. Contact Jamie Hartley, 253-565-8700. Also, Zogs on Fox Island, great place to grab a cold beer, watch the game, hang out with friends. They got their new hours. Look them up on Instagram and Facebook. What kind of cigar you puffing on there, Mike Garafolo? For our listeners, he's got a wonderful cigar in the back of his yard in the English Garden. It looks like.
It's my only window today. I got John Schneider coming up, coincidentally enough.
Oh, you do?
We've got he's on the Insiders. It'll be tonight, but we're taping it this afternoon. So we got Schneider coming up in a little bit. I've got to go pick up my daughter right after that. I've got a call right before that. So you're in my window. So you're getting smoke blown in your face.
Do me a favor. Just take a big rip and right into the camera. Yeah, there you go.
I wish I could blow a ring. I just blow a ring right there.
Yeah, just blow a ring. God, it's beautiful. Good for you.
To answer your question, it's an Oliva Series O.
Okay. Nice. Now, to me, I mean, I have a cigar. That means nothing to me. There you go. No, I like them, but I have a buddy that is all the cigar guy, so I just depend on what he provides.
There's no way he'd be. This is like right down the middle. Not going to offend anybody. Yeah. Nobody's going to say it's a bad stick.
Yeah.
If you said, oh, Mike was smoking an Oliva, wish he was drinking, by the way. That's Freudian slip or whatever. But got to work later, you know.
Okay, so what, you got Schneider coming on. What are you going to ask Schneider? What do we got with John Schneider?
What should we ask him?
Okay, let's prep some questions. Here we go.
Well, listen, I want to know about, they were excited to get Sam Howell, so I want to know about Howell's development and whether he's got a shot to he's not going to say he's going to push Geno, but they're happy to have him around. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what McDaniel's done this spring and the vibe there, see what kind of feeling he gets. He'll probably take another shot at us during the Combine when we had him on. He made a joke that he loved our show. He loves our show, The Outsiders. So he'll probably call it The Outsiders again because he seems like the kind of guy when he's got a good line, he'll go back to it again. So we're ready for that one today.
Yeah, okay. So let's press him in. I want you to pin him down. I want you to pin him down on Michael Penix.
See, I would have thought. Well, I don't know. I would have thought you would have said Jamal Adams, but go ahead, Michael Penix.
Okay, Penix.
What do you want to know?
I want to know if they would have just ask him. Would you have picked him if he was there? Just yes or no, and don't dance around it.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
And then Jamal Adams too.
And then Jamal Adams. There it is.
Yeah, I want to know. It's the only thing we got going right now in the offseason is Jamal Adams stock. So pin him down on Jamal Adams. They're gonna bring him back.
Nothing else going on there. No Jake Bobo.
No Jake Bobo. No, there's no Jake Bobo love right now. All right, pin him down on.
I thought I saw something the other day. I thought he made a play in practice the other day. Got everybody excited. No,
it's OTAs. Really? No one cares about OTAs.
Well, which is why, I was surprised at the reaction, and maybe it was more than it actually was, and just felt like there was more to our guy Tom Pelissero and his report last week about they may move the OTAs and make it. This continuous thing that starts in late June or early July and ramps up in the training camp and basically get rid of the spring or, modify the spring and make it. Brandon Graham, you're my hero. The Eagles defensive end, 15 years in the NFL now, I think.
Yeah.
Came out and said that, that's a bad idea. Shorten the spring. He said shorten the spring. But keep, there's the 4th of July, there's that time of the summer that people get to spend with their families. Don't take that away. And I think that's a big thing. I think we talked about this last week, right?
Yeah, I agree. Listen, let them be with their family. I mean, that's what it's all. They get very limited time to kind of be with their family. And I think that's the prime time that they can be with their family. Will you, when you're doing the Insiders tonight and when you're taping this, will you have no cigar? Will the NFL Network let you throw a cigar on the camera?
It ain't about the network. Face? It ain't about the network, dude. I can't light a cigar in the house. My wife will kill me. Okay.
Well,
every now and then I'll joke.
Can't you just do it out the show?
No, the camera's inside. You know how big that box is? I can't just wheel it outside.
Just throw it in Schneider's face.
So sometimes in the dead of February or something when I haven't had a stick in like 3 months because it's just so cold. And I don't have an indoor place to go to, which is fine. I prefer that, right? I want to have an off season because it forces me to not have any cigars for an extended period of time. It's also an excuse to be like, oh, I had 3 this week? No problem. Yeah. Look how many weeks I'm not going to have one coming up.
So you don't have one. You don't have one a day.
No. During the summer, I try to average about 2 a week.
Okay.
Right? That feels like enough and not too much.
Okay, you know what you can ask Schneider? How about this one? Because this was actually a question. You remember the old school mailbag? Did you ever do it when you were writing and covering the Giants? Did you do a mailbag? Was that a thing back then?
Yeah. We were trying to find ways to fill the blog.
Right.
Because when we first had the blog, they were like, well, we don't want this to be don't be what you're writing in the paper. Make it a something that complements, you know what I mean? Like, so they tried to do like a lot of color, and it actually wound up getting me and Bob Whitfield in trouble. And they were like, well, let's just stick to football news. So.
Okay. So someone, well, I mean, do I want the story? What'd you do? What'd you get in trouble for?
So we started, he was just so worldly and experienced and so outspoken and so crazy, in a good way. That we were doing Ask Bob Whitfield. We did Ask Bob Whitfield.
Beans. Let's go.
It was only like a couple. We made Deadspin. I'll put it to you that way. It was not our greatest. So it's just we didn't get many. I was like, yeah, if you have questions for Bob Whitfield, send them in. And one of my idiot friends sent in a question, and we asked the question. Bob took it somewhere. I played it for my editor. He loved it. They wanted to be edgy. We ran it, and we wound up on Deadspin. So
do I have to go look this up?
The question was, this was stupid. This was really stupid. It's stupid of me to bring it up. We should never have done this. I'm not encouraging this behavior.
Okay, then you don't have to say it. I mean, it's this. If you don't want to do it, you don't want to say it. You don't want to be kind of that, passive.
The question was, whose backfield would you like to see in motion?
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, that was the end of Ask Bob Whitfield.
What was the answer?
Brought to you by NJ.com. It's not a good answer.
Well, I have to think about that one. There's lots to pick from.
Even the Giants PR was like, yes, probably a little too much yesterday. Right? I was like, yeah, you know what? Our people had the same reaction.
Okay, I kind of missed Deadspin. What happened to it? Was it the Hulk Hogan thing that killed Deadspin, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and then a lot of those guys kind of fell off. Not fell off, but they left Deadspin, and just there were only a few left, and then there was the whole lawsuit and all that stuff. Right. So yeah, that's not the same Deadspin you remember.
No, I think it is. It still around? But just like
they rebooted, and I don't know. I don't know what their mission statement is these days. It's not what it was before. I don't think we'll be getting any Brett Favre or anybody else's pictures or anything like that.
That's right. I forgot about that. All right.
Yeah.
So in one of the mail bags for the great Bob Condotta, you remember Bobby, Bobby
Love
C
Bob.
From the Seattle Times. Someone asked Bob, hey, if the Seahawks struggle this year, does John Schneider go on the hot seat next year? I want you to ask him that. Are you going to be on the hot seat next year?
No, I'm not going to ask. I'll answer it for you. No. Yeah. There's no way. Right? Because through the whole process at the end of the season, evaluating Jody Allen, deciding what you wanted to do, I still, to this day, right, we talk, it was Pete Carroll resigned. He didn't really resign. Like, we know he didn't resign, right? We know it was a firing, basically, especially because he talked about his desire to continue coaching in the NFL if the situation was right. So basically not that it was a war between the two, but she sided with John Schneider, the general manager. I can't imagine that 1 year would change her opinion or view of John as a general manager, that she wants to lead this team into the future and to bring in a new head coach. So, no, I don't see that happening at all.
Yeah. The speaking of her, what is there anything new on that front? Like when she's going to sell or not sell? Because,
what's been reported on the length of time that she has to do it? Has it been spelled out?
I think it's by. I'm going to make up a number. I want to say it's by 28 that she has to do it.
Oh, I don't think so. I think it's longer. I thought it was like 20 years that she had to do it or something
Really?
like that. I could be wrong. I thought it was something like that. That'll be one of my questions. Hey, well, how long does your owner have to sell? Because she's supposed to sell. That'll be right out of the gate. No, she's got some time on that. So, nobody said to me, hey, watch out for a Seahawks sale at all anytime in the near future. So,
well, I'll pull this up here. I'm looking at a story.
It is kind of surprising to me, though, that if Paul Allen, as smart as he was and as smart as the people around him were, if he wanted the team sold, wouldn't have it spelled out that it had to be. I mean, I don't know the laws. I'm treading now into areas that are not my expertise, but I would have thought that it would have been like, hey, X got to be done by X time or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. See, has to be sold within 10 to 20 years.
There you go. See, she's got up to 20 then. All right. Yeah,
so
I thought
I guess she has a while. And I guess she has, and she's made it, I think, kind of like privately known that she wants to keep it. But,
Yeah, she enjoys it. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind. Everything I've heard, I actually did see her at the owners' meetings. It was the first time that I actually met her and had a chance. I mean, it was a very brief conversation. I don't want to say we got into a lengthy conversation, but you could tell she enjoyed being there and being part of the process. And yeah, I don't get the sense that she's like, hey, what do I do with this team here? Do I just? Yeah, no, she likes being an owner.
It's weird because they also own the Blazers, right? And so Portland is a couple hours south of Seattle, and the Blazers fans cannot stand her. Everybody wants her to sell the team. Everybody wants her to sell to Phil Knight, but she refuses to do it.
Yeah. I'm not that versed in the NBA. I know I haven't seen them in the postseason. I guess they have not been good lately.
They haven't been good since Clyde Drexler, and that's been a while. Okay.
What's his name? Hit the game-winning shot that one year. It became a meme.
I know, Damian Lillard. Yeah. You know who that was against, right? The Thunder. Do you remember who the Thunder used to be?
Yeah.
Right there.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's why we love Damian.
It all comes full circle.
Yeah, it does come full circle. So she's got a while to sell. Schneider not on the hot seat. You should ask him that though. What about Pete Carroll? What do you think? What's Pete Carroll up to? Has anyone? He hasn't done a single interview. Nothing since being fired.
What's there to say? I don't know. I guess Belichick has popped up. I don't know. I have not heard anything about Pete Carroll in the media or anything like that. I know it was possibly raised, the idea of going back to the Chargers, but it seemed like they locked in on Jim Harbaugh right away, and he was locked in on them, so that never really materialized. It's a guy that, I'd love to know what his days are like. This is how I felt when Tom Coughlin was done coaching too. It's like, I want to know, what is this guy whose days were structured to the second? He used to, I'm not kidding you, Tom Coughlin's schedules would be like, weightlifting, shower, and it was like, not to this minute, it was to 30 seconds of his day. To this second, which is kind of weird to me that he would always kind of be late for his press conferences, and sometimes they would take longer, and he would let it go. And it's just like, all right, don't you have this thing scheduled to the second? Maybe it's not as tightly scheduled as we want to believe, and maybe it's more of a mental thing that he did that, But I'd love to know what Pete Carroll is doing, because this is not a guy to sit around and smoke cigars and hang out in his backyard and garden,
What if we found him, right? He's been out of the public spotlight, right? For a while. You haven't seen him. He's got a Letterman beard, and he's put on 200 pounds. Just some fat ass. Is that? Wait a minute. Is that Pete Carroll over there?
I still can't get over how he looked when he took his shirt off for DK Metcalf at the Combine that year. So that would have to be some fall from grace for him to be 300 pounds.
Let yourself go.
Tipping the
scales. He would deserve it. He deserved to let himself go. Yeah, it's been odd, right? I mean, we've seen and heard more from Belichick, Mike, who hated the media.
Yeah.
Apparently hated the media. Carroll always seemed like he got along with it, right? And you've heard.
I never understood that.
Carroll is. I mean, nowhere, no one has heard from him. It's weird.
Mm-hmm. I never understood the whole Belichick thing, because you knew that there was a pulse there, right? You knew, and he would do his weekly radio interviews and be asked the same questions and give at length answers, not the greatest answers in the world, but like, oh, okay, you're a human being, and just why only at your press conferences did you decide to be like that? And it's funny because you watch the Dynasty, you saw early on, he came to the press conference and announced that Tom Brady was going to be the starting quarterback. You couldn't get him to tell you who the gunner was going to be late in his career. I was like, when did this change? And I asked the people up there, I said, when did this change? And he goes, Spygate. Oh, okay, all right, get it. So relatively early on, but it's
it's like Marshawn Lynch. Do you remember pre-Lynch? Like Lynch used to be great with the media, was awesome. And then he got upset when he got arrested for the DUI. He was driving, I don't know if you remember this, he was driving a van like after I think it was like a kid's camp or something. He got a DUI. And so he came back and people asked him about it. Like, hey man, like what happened? And he got mad that people would ask him about it and he shut it down. And then he became Marshawn Lynch.
Was this in Seattle?
It was in Seattle, yep. His first few years in
Didn't he have one in Buffalo too?
Yeah, he didn't he hit a woman in a crosswalk?
Something like that. And so I had to have been asked about it back then. I can't imagine it was surprising that he was asked again this time.
Early on in Seattle, it was great. He was hilarious. He was funny. He did radio interviews. He was great. But then he got fed up with the media and turned. It's unfortunate because his second career right into the limited media does. He's really good. So back to Carroll. Do you think? Is there ever any rumors about him being connected to any jobs? Do you think he wants to get back into it?
Think about what you talked about Belichick. Think about that. If you're going to go that route, that guy that it's kind of like when there's a couple of defensive coordinators like Steve Spagnuolo, Lou Anarumo are the two guys that we're surprised they haven't gotten head coaching jobs as good as defensive coordinators as they've been the last couple of years. It's almost like is one blocking the other, right? They're kind of the same bracket, age, the number of years they've been coordinators. Well, I guess Spags more than Lou. I'd almost put does Belichick block Carroll, right? If you're going to go that route of we want to get – now, listen, it could be personal preference. You could say I'd rather have Pete Carroll. We saw the story about Belichick that ESPN reported, which I think there was a lot of truth in that with regard to the fear that a guy comes in and just takes over everything. So maybe you say Pete Carroll wouldn't be that guy. We'd be more of a preference that way. I don't know. We'd have to see – as we get closer to the coaching cycle this upcoming season. I think I just went through this with somebody. I think we're looking at about a half dozen openings next year, which is not the most that we've seen recently, but it's probably around that number. And again, you can't predict it, right? Everybody's saying, well, Philly's going to be open. Well, we don't know that. What if they go to the Super Bowl? Obviously, it's going to have to play out, so we'll see.
Will Ben Johnson be on a list again? He was in the OTAs. He had talked about, I think it was the first time maybe he had addressed it since, he had not taken an NFL job and just said, hey, I didn't want to go because I like my situation here, and I didn't know what the situations in those teams would be. There's many people that didn't kind of believe his account, and maybe more were like, well, these teams didn't ultimately choose you. What is he still high on people's radars in the NFL circles?
If you're a young, and he is young, offensive mind, and you're doing as well as he's done, he's going to be in the radar, and it's not like even Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels took a job, then turned it down, and still wound up getting head coaching looks, and basically turned down a few opportunities until the Raiders popped up, and he says, this is a right fit for me, which it wound up not being the right fit for him. So you can't, it's not like pulling out of jobs back-to-back years, which we could debate. Did he pull out of Washington, or were they not going to hire him? I think it was a little bit of both. I know that there was an interest on Washington's end to go elsewhere, and they like Dan Quinn, and I know that people are skeptical of that, and I've heard it. But I would say through that process that the feeling out process on both sides was not good. So Ben Johnson telling you that he didn't have a good feel for Washington or any of the other jobs. The thing that he pulled out of Washington and Seattle simultaneously. It was only Washington that he didn't have the interest in. So I don't know. He'll be in the mix again next year. I like the idea of, making sure it's the right fit for you, even as an offensive guy. Defensive guys have got to be ultra careful because they often get one shot. Offensive guys, even if you bomb, you can get yourself another shot going forward because it's an offensive leaning league. I think it was a little bit of both in Washington. And we'll see where he goes. I loved he went up there. He's like, hey, yeah, the 8 guys that got hired, how many are going to have a job in 3 years? Maybe 4.5. Like, he already fired half the coaches that just got hired on jobs that he passed. He was like, half these guys are going to get fired. And I didn't name names, right? Which would have been, a little too far, but
it's pretty obvious of who he's talking about. All right, Mike, we've seen this trend, right, with college sports, with guys going to professional sports. And so we today, as you and I are recording this here on Thursday, there's rumors. Now maybe by tomorrow this isn't true, and they end up hiring J.J. Redick. But you hear these rumors where the Lakers want to hire Dan Hurley. But you more and more where college coaches now are jumping to the professional ranks. Here locally, Ryan Grubb was a hot commodity in the college circles. A lot of people wanted him to be the next coach at Washington. Everyone thought he'd be a head coach in college football. He surprises everyone, takes an offensive coordinator job there with the Seahawks. Are we going to see this trend more? Are you going to see more and more college coaches jumping out of the sport because of what's happening, the NIL, all that stuff, and saying, I'm going to the NFL?
Yeah, I don't speak to the basketball end of things. I won't, because I don't have a great grasp of that. I would assume they're dealing with the same things that these guys in football are dealing with. Maybe it's a little bit less because there's only so many guys on the roster, whereas, these college guys are dealing with everybody from the quarterback down to the offensive lineman, down to the specialists. But it was a attempted mass exodus this past year. And I remember talking to a college coach at the Senior Bowl who said, like, it's just nonstop. We only get 1 month of the entire calendar where it's not allowed. Like, you're not allowed to have visits or guys on campus. I forget which month it is. Maybe it's February. But he's like, I just don't have time for my family, and my wife is just, all right, we're going away without you. And I feel for those guys, because what we talked about with the OTAs in the NFL, like, you should have time to spend with your family. Yes, it's a complicated sport. Yes, it's a competitive sport, but you shouldn't cease to be a human being. And these guys are trying to go from head coaching jobs or head coaching potential opportunities to be coordinators in the Chip Kelly. I mean, Chip Kelly at UCLA was trying to get an offensive coordinator gig in the NFL to get out of UCLA. Now he wound up taking a coordinator job elsewhere in college, but you don't have the responsibility of being a head coach with all this stuff they don't want to deal with. And Nick Saban's comments about, the players only care about the money, and I know he took a lot of heat for that, because it's like, well, it was great all those years when you were getting paid and they were playing for free. And the culture has definitely changed. These guys are having a hard time accepting that. And there's more responsibilities on their plate, so they're like, let's get to the pros where we don't have to deal with a whole lot of this stuff.
Yeah, okay, so who do you think the potential next wave from college to the pros could be? So you've always heard rumors of James Franklin of Penn State. It always feels like he has been brought up there in the NFL world. What about Ryan Day at Ohio State? What about if he has 1 or 2 good years at Alabama? What about Kalen DeBoer?
Yeah, I mean, these are the guys that we'd be watching. Lincoln Riley's been long rumored, so you wonder if and when that jump is going to happen. Franklin doesn't strike me. Franklin strikes me as a college guy, right? Like, that just feels like you're in the right place for you and what you do and how you do things.
Because he's kind of perceived as a hard ass, is that why?
Yeah, a little bit. And I think he, I don't know. I don't know that his act, I don't want to say it like in the negative way, but the way that he approaches and does things would translate to the NFL. I just get that feel.
But that's fair though, because that's kind of a knock on Hurley, and even Dan Hurley's acknowledged that if he went to the pros, he would have to change the way that he acts on the sidelines and he coaches. He can't yell at these guys like he does in college.
Oh no, you got it. Oh no, you're not the head coach. I remember having a conversation recently with somebody. And he's like, you guys don't understand. Like, the NFL, the head coach is the most important figure in a building, right? Head coach, quarterback, neck and neck, depending on how accomplished the quarterback is. He's like, in the NBA, your head coach is like your 6th most important person in the building. He's an
absolute nobody.
Crazy to
you
hear
think
that.
Of the NBA head coaches. They're nobodies. They're absolute. Look at the Celtics, right? That guy, Missoula, he's a nobody. He's an absolute nobody. The guy pulling the strings is the former coach and Brad Stevens. I mean, he's the coach of the team.
Right.
So,
Right, and when they had the scandal with the previous coach, it was like, oh, this they're gonna fall off. They're about to win the title here, or maybe they don't.
But they're one of the favorites.
I'm not making a pick here.
Go ahead, make a pick. They're obviously one of the favorites to win it.
I'll take Dallas in 6.
I'd love it. I'd love to see it. Justin Jefferson, the deal. That's a huge deal. Obviously, what does that do for the wide receiver market? What does it do, and how does it impact someone like DK Metcalf?
Here's what it does, okay? And this is just my personal preference, and some of the people in the media, because we love to report on these deals and compare these deals. DeAndre Hopkins, when he got traded, got a bump on his deal for no real reason other than he got a trade and he had a little bit of leverage and they wanted to make him feel good. So they tacked on a couple of years, and it skyrocketed the average value of the deals. And it was legit. I'm not saying it was fake. It was legit. But it created this $27 million per year when the number at the time for the top of the market was 20, right? So he got, God bless him, he got way more money than he probably should have. The Cardinals should have been like, well, we just traded for you, play out the contract, we'll give you a little bit. But they gave him a ton of money. And then what happened was guys like Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams wanted to be known as the highest paid wide receiver. So they started tacking on these balloon numbers on the back end of the deal. For Hill, it was $45 million. For Adams, it was like, I don't know, 30. It may have been 35, which is actually now reasonable considering the market. But Tyreek Hill's was $45 million. We're like, well, he's never going to get that $45 million. Now, what he might get, because they're trying to figure out a solution here, because he's now been passed by Jalen Waddle, because the real average on his deal was $25 million. They may borrow from that 45 and say, we'll move some of that money up. And then all of a sudden, that last year, which was fake, becomes real. So the team buys another year simply by moving money that's on the books forward and kind of spreading it out. So that may be the solution that winds up happening there. But for Justin Jefferson, now we've got a new top of the market. It's a $35 million deal. There's no fluff. It's structured as every other NFL, not every other, but the standard NFL deal that you would see. It's a real deal in some sense. And it was a big jump from the top of the market at 30, now up to 35. So it gives CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase, that's the ceiling. You wouldn't think they would get above that. You would say probably going to equal that. So that should help their deals get done eventually, and start to smooth this out and bring some sanity to the wide receiver.
Now, maybe you can bring this up to Schneider when you talk to him today. When do you start dealing with Metcalf? When does he start? If they want to redo something with him, when does that process get underway?
I mean, I'm sure it's now, because the guy that represents DK Metcalf is Tory Dandy, who's got a bunch of guys, and he's done some great deals over the years. Sammy Watkins, he did a deal with Sammy Watkins a couple of years ago with the Chiefs. I think it was $18 million a year at the time, whatever it was. That was one of the great deals in recent memory, because Sammy Watkins' production was never what we thought it was going to be when he was drafted or whatever.
You can't say Sammy Watkins without just saying Sammy Watkins. Like what? Come on. Sexual chocolate? Mr. Randy Watson coming to America? No.
Watkins.
I don't know. It just come on. Just saying Sammy Watkins. Put your hands together for Mr. Randy Watson.
I'll tell you what. You can do that. I'll just,
you know what? That was a dud. That would crash. That was a.
The first 3 letters of the last name were the same.
Just crashed. Okay, you know what? Sometimes you swing and miss. I swung and missed. Yeah, ask him about Metcalf.
I'll get on that. Yeah. This is good. We're workshopping an interview.
We are.
Live on the air here.
Lastly, and then we'll cut you loose. CJ Stroud, Aaron Rodgers. I'll be honest with you. I haven't really followed this story. What did Stroud do? Did he talk shit about him? What did he say?
I love CJ Stroud, right? I love CJ Stroud because he's learning how to create content, which is great because this is the dead time of the year. And he had a great comment around the draft about Marvin Harrison. People said, well, maybe Malik Neighbors will be the top receiver taken. And CJ Stroud said to all the GMs out there, don't be stupid, right? Like, just make this. And then he did. The Cardinals took him, first receiver taken. And then he comes out, because we ran this on the show last night. He's like, my top 5 quarterbacks from last year, based on last year. And I forget the number. It was I think it was Mahomes, Lamar, and then he goes, myself. He put himself at third. Josh Allen, I think, was fifth. I can't remember who was fourth. And it was like, that's pretty fair. Like, you didn't put yourself at the top of the list. You didn't put yourself at the bottom. You gave yourself a buffer either way. And so we debated it on the air last night. And then he's on the, oh, gosh, what's the name of the podcast? Something Millions with a Z. Millions, I don't know. Go look it up while I'm answering. And he says that Matthew Stafford. If Matthew Stafford was Aaron Rodgers, he was in Green Bay with all the talent around him, and at a time where maybe the division wasn't as competitive, like he would have won multiple Super Bowl rings, whereas Rodgers won only one, which I'm sure sat incredibly well with Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure he loved that. So that's what he said, and then that wound up being
okay. It's $1 million worth of game. That's the podcast. You and I should be on
the
that.
Z is on
Z. Yeah.
The Z is on dollars, not millions. I screwed that. So $1 million. What is it?
$1 million worth of game.
What? $1 million worth of game. That's the podcast.
That should be ours. That should be the name of ours. So Rodgers, when does Rodgers respond on McAfee? When does that happen? Right.
Well, they're in minicamp next week, I think. The Jets are. So I think he's got to talk during then. So I'm sure that'll be the moment. I don't know. We'll see what he comes up with. I happen to think I'm starting to get a vibe. A
vibe on what?
And you can't on the Jets. And you can't predict an Achilles pop. Okay, you can't. So, but I'm just. As I sit
feel
here,
good about
this
the
is
Jets.
my vibe time of the year. I let it like almost via osmosis come over me. Right? Who are my teams that I'm looking at?
Okay.
I'm starting to get a vibe.
You got a little vibe. You're buying in on the Jets. He's got something to prove. The comeback story of Aaron Rodgers.
And they're in my backyard. Not literally in my backyard. They're in my proverbial backyard. So maybe I'm just. But it's not like the same kind of daily hammer of Jets news and consciousness as it was last year. But I'm just. And they got a tough schedule, especially early on. But I'm just starting to get a vibe about the Jets.
Here's the only thing I want with the Jets. Yeah. Just bring back the Mark Gastineau uniforms, and I'm good. I want the olds.
Well, they sort of did, right?
I want them back full time. Let's go.
I was golfing with 3 huge Jets fans the day that they unveiled their new jerseys. And they were like, look at the new jerseys. I was like, what? They said, well, we had the white ones. Now they're doing the green ones or something. I was like, okay, whatever. They look good.
Yeah.
I dig them.
All right. What time does the Insiders air Pacific?
4 p.m. Pacific time. John Schneider, Seahawks general manager, joins us to maybe discuss. What did we talk
Jamal
about?
Adams,
Jody Allen, DK Metcalf.
Why did he fire
Adams.
Pete Carroll?
Oh, will he himself get fired next year if you don't have a winning season?
You want me to text you the reader that wrote that into Condota?
Well, I think you should text me the order of importance in your mind, because I don't think I'm getting all 5 questions in.
How many over under? How many are you taping this, or is it right at 4? You're taping it later.
We're taping it earlier.
See,
that's how it works. You tape it earlier.
Okay, so it's like.
It's not like Spaceballs the movie.
Great movie. God, that's an all-timer.
When will then be now?
So,
soon.
How many over under? I'm going to say 3.5 beers will he be in? I'll say over.
At 11 a.m. Seattle time?
Yeah. I mean, it's summer break. Come on, he's OTAs are almost over.
It's not quite summer break. And this is why I'm saying they got to give these guys their summer break, because if not, they may have to take it while they're on the clock.
Insiders, 4 o'clock Pacific. You're the best. Enjoy the rest of that cigar. Mike Garafolo every week. NFL Network brought to you by Hartley and Hartley Insurance. Also, Zogs on Fox On. Thank you, Mike.
Does Jamie Hartley like a cigar while he's golfing? We're going to have to find out.